All right, our special guest this week, obviously, was Ash Chandrasinghe, but as we look back in time, Matt, we're going to talk to Bob Quiney. Now, when I say the name Bob Quiney, what do you think of?
John Scholes. We've got a medal named after John Scholes, and pretty much the Best Bloke Award. It's been running for years now, and yeah, Bobby's just one of those people who pretty much took me under his wing when I first joined. He probably doesn't really know that, but yeah, I sort of looked up to him. He was one of the guys that sort of made me feel probably most welcome, him and Huss and Petey Hanscom as well. So very, very good man.
Bob Quiney, welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me. I've got tingles then. I don't like compliments very often, but I'll take that one. And I probably didn't, knowing that you're on this podcast today, I was thinking back to, my interactions with you when you first come on the scene, and I feel like you're at the academy, I think 2 or 3 years of those first 4 years, I reckon, that you're around. And, he was a really quiet kid, just went about his business in the locker room. But it was one thing that Huss and I made sure we did, either made someone feel really comfortable or uncomfortable, but to get to being comfortable, if that makes sense, like to bring them out of their shell. So I'm glad there was some form of impact there. So I appreciate that. Very
good. So it doesn't matter who I speak to, they'll always say the same thing about you. Great team man, above all else. How much do you wear that as a badge of honour?
Oh, not a badge of honour. I think it's good from a respect perspective. If I walk away from my cricket career and people go, oh, that's the guy who saved the seagull and he was a good bloke, I probably missed the trick a little bit there. It'd be nice to say it wasn't the worst batter. But I guess, it is. It means, I guess, my time in the game, I did pride myself on being, team first, and it potentially got me a few extra games at times as well. But so it's not a badge of honour, but something I'm pretty proud of as well.
Did that happen because you were always that way, junior cricket, going through the grades, or is it something that came a bit later when you realised, as you knew a bit more about your game, but also about the importance of being a good team man?
I think it evolved from the manners and respect my dad taught me as a kid to get into St Kilda. My first trainings at St Kilda were in creams and whites as well. Like we had to Tuesday, Thursday in creams and then Saturday play in them. And it was about respect and not wearing a hat in a bar. They had this, fines if you did it. It's a respect to those St Kilda cricketers who had fought in the war. So it was a hats off to them. And then people within the club who were saying they probably did the same thing when they were younger. It's almost doing your apprenticeship really, and going to get the hat for the people, being happy for other people when they do well, and you just get used to it. And you see that when everyone buys in, it actually works. So it just helps when you got some good cattle around you at the same time.
Yeah, exactly right. So it took until you were about 24 before you played first class cricket. Is there a reason why it took so long? I mean, the team was very strong through that period, but even your own development as a cricketer?
A lot of people probably say they don't think they're going to get to a certain level. I generally never tried to become a professional cricketer. It was probably, there was 2 crucial moments in my life. One was I got my year 12 results. I got 40 and I rang my dad. No, my dad rang me. I was at home and he said, how'd you go? And I said, I got 40. I was like, Dad, are you there? He's like, we'll talk when I get home. And I was like, oh shit, like this is going to be a really long afternoon until Dad gets home. It was the best thing that he had, like probably spoke about it to other people at work, like his brother and stuff like that. And he got home and later that year for Christmas, he bought me a trip to England. He goes, we're organising for you to go to England. You're playing cricket. And I'm like, oh, cool, that's all right, And in hindsight, you look back and it was because, you know what, my sisters, one got 98, one got 90 on their enter scores, and I got 40. So there's the ugly duckling in the family from an academic perspective. So I went to England, and then the second crucial moment came up is I went to England as 100 kilos, learnt so much about life, learnt how to win games as well as a batter, but unfortunately got exposed to pay TV before it really became popular here. I think Optus Vision had just started at that stage, and they had Sky TV over there, and my goodness, it was heaven. And the Domino's ads would come on. I'd order a pizza, the cans of beer, as you both know, They're not your 370 ml cans. They're double that. And before I know it, I was 115 kilos back on the plane home. So I got some honest feedback from St Kilda boys when I got back. And those two moments were like, okay, what the hell am I doing with my cricket here? My dad's given me a chance here to go down a specific avenue. Worked hard on my fielding and my fitness and my batting, went through the grades, and then luckily enough, did well enough to get a rookie contract. Didn't play. I think I played an exhibition game against the World 11, but didn't play any other games. Got invited back to train. I thought, they don't want me. My dad said, "Don't be a dickhead. Get your head out of your ass. Go back and train." So you'd train in the morning, work at the Puma factory during the day, then you go train again at night. And it was that season that I see that I one day debut against Queensland, and then Shield debut against Tassie next month.
So how many times did you go to England in the end?
Overall, one full season, one half season, but we went on a couple of tours. Like Cricket Victoria did some really good tours back in the day called the Emerging Players Tours. They were very social tours, but they were really good. Like the rookies went, so Finch, Matty Harrison, Sids, myself, a bloke called Matty Innes. There was a couple more, Aidan Blizzard. There were a couple, Clint Mackay. There were these like pretty good group of cricketers going to England, and just we played against Knott's second 11 a couple of times. At one stage we went to India. We did an India-Sri Lanka trip. There was a bombing in Sri Lanka, so half the team wanted to stay in the hotel. The other half were keen to play, so we went shopping. A couple of the other boys who didn't want to go out snuck out and got caught. So definitely a lot of life experiences, but I would recommend anyone to go to England and play cricket for multiple reasons: to get out of their life comfort zone, to play on different wickets, to be the pro and learn how to win games for people. And then aesthetically, the grounds over there, you both know that, they're so good to have. The ground I played on was at Battle, and it was so small that if you hit a 6, it only counted as 4 anyway. And on one side, you got the back of houses from the main town. At one end, you've got the recreation of the Battle of Hastings. And then on the other side, you've just got paddocks. So if you hit the ball on one side, you've got cow pads. On the other side, you've got glass windows. So
probably a tree in the middle of the field as well.
Well, there's heaps of them over in England, aren't there? Yeah. There are trees, and you go, what happens here? So, there's a 6. All right, no worries. Try for the tree.
So, because the reason I wanted to ask you about that is whether it's through playing league cricket or playing with the Crusaders, as you did as well, that whole life experience, I guess perspective as well, to come back that, it took till you're 24 before you're playing for Victoria. You had a lot of life experiences before you actually get into that high pressure environment of first class cricket.
Yeah, and I think it's important to have those life experiences as well. It doesn't have to be necessarily playing cricket in England. It could be working. It could be exposed to your non-cricket stuff. And it's probably a lot harder now with guys coming through the 17s and 19s. And I guess the only positive of me not coming through that pathway was I was exposed to life, really. Although I still needed, at that age, I still think a lot of people do need that nudge or a prod from a parent or a mentor to go, hey, I know you want to do this, but this is what you should be doing for now, and then let that person grow. So
losing all that weight, I remember at the time talking to you about giving up KFC or giving up fast food, and it was a real specific commitment to changing your life. How hard was it to do it, or was it actually easy to do it? Did the light go off in your head?
It was both. There was a light going off, but I would have at least 2 cans of Coke a day at one stage. And the hardest thing about when you have that, one, there's the habit of getting used to drinking it, but with the sugars, like, you go off it for a bit and you're drinking water and your brain's going, where's this sweet stuff? Where's my hit? But I just knew, and I think I had supportive friends around me as well. Like, there'd be times where you don't go out, and you probably do the same thing. You might go somewhere and not drink, and people are like, "What you ain't doing? Well, I've got bigger fish to fry here. I'm going to give it a crack." And you probably notice. I'm not sure whether, Shorty, you notice when you think you're fit enough, and then you get into an environment like this where your fitness level needs to go to another level, and you go, "I don't want to eat that shit or drink bad drinks because I know I've put in all this work." Just let me give it a nice little period here of getting fit.
I think you're right. Like,
because your background's a bit different, isn't it? I mean, footy or cricket or whatever like that. Like you were always the athlete before you even started playing cricket in a lot of ways.
I think, sort of back in my day with the two brothers, we were sort of playing everything and in the backyard. And Bobby's right. Like, there's times when you do grow up and you're like, shit, I can't eat this, or maybe I need to rein it in with going out on the weekends and not drink, and still enjoy your time with your mates and stuff. But yeah, there are the sacrifices that you need to make, and it's amazing how much better you actually do feel. Not only physically, but I suppose mentally, and you just feel fresher and ready to go. That's another thing about Bobby. Like, a lot of people do say how much of a good bloke he is, but something I saw towards the end of his career was just still how much he still wanted it and how hard he worked. And what age were you when you retired? Sort of mid-30s?
Yeah. I think it's about 5 years ago now.
Yeah, so it was amazing how much, he was still wanting to play for Victoria, and just to see him how hard he worked. Pretty motivating as a younger guy coming through and sort of someone to look up to. Like, that's pretty professional of what he was doing. So you're definitely right with some of those sacrifices that you need to make. And
how many weddings or major birthdays you potentially either missed, or like you've got mates who you text the next day and they're like, "Whoa, geez, how good was last night?" And you're like, FOMO straight away.
Even this year, I've had probably 3 weddings I couldn't get to, but that's the thing. You get used to it, and at the end of the day, you're doing what you love, and there's always going to be the upside of something coming up soon. So
spot on.
The last one about the England experience before Victoria, because you mentioned it before about the responsibility of winning games for a club, the pressure of if you make a duck on the Saturday, then make another one on the Sunday, of people talking behind your back, all that sort of thing. Dealing with that pressure, did that help you then? Because there's batting well and there's actually knowing how to make runs. I think there's a
batsmanship almost.
Yes,
yeah. No, for sure.
You learn all of that when you're playing over there all the time.
Correct. And you also, one thing I learned, because I didn't necessarily come back and I wasn't a huge match winner, for St Kilda at times, Victoria at times, not like, you think of a Huss, a Whitey, a Hodgie, Herbie, who's obviously on this podcast, they're out and out match winners, but you learn how to get past like the old 20 and 30 on board. Hang on, I can't just rely on Hodge or White or Huss to finish the job here. I need to do it, and you learn how to do that as well, which is pretty cool. And it doesn't always work because it's also an opportunity to explore your game as well. Yeah. The one thing people talk about, you work on a sweep shot in the nets, and then you go have a practice match, and you're like, I need to do well to try and start in the team. But it's the perfect opportunity but unless you go to, like, you can't do it unless you go to England or Darwin or something like that to expose that. So, it was such a great learning experience. I'm actually keen to go back, not to play, but it'd be nice to go back to the Ashes next year.
It would be. Very nice. Take us through that whole thing of getting into the state team at a time when it was so strong. You mentioned some of the names then. You're having to almost get past one of those to get into the team. Open the batting, you batted 3, you batted in the middle order, so you could bat a variety of different roles. What was that like, just getting in and then staying in?
Getting in was amazing. I never thought I'd play state cricket for one. I guess filling holes was something I had to be good at, because at that time we did have a strong side, but there was always seemed to be one spot sort of up for grabs. Lloyd Mash was around at that time, but you'd always have either Hodge was going for Australia, then Whitey and Huss were away for Australia, and there was always a spot or two ready to go, and whether it be 1-day cricket or 4-day cricket. And I feel like in Shield cricket, I was probably in and out a little bit for the first couple of years. I started at 3, and then I found my niche. I think I might have gone to Open, and then I've gone down to 5 and 6, and then I had a really good season. But then there was a spot opening, and Shippy said, "Do you want to Open?" I said, "Oh, I think I'm going right at 5 and 6." And he goes, I think opening might be better. And so I went back to Open and had another good year. But it was also, it's smart from him, because then he can bring someone in who's a bit younger, expose them, through the middle to lower order, and team balance. So, you just learn to adapt. I'd much prefer to open the batting. Like I think I ticked off nearly everything an opener can do. You go out first ball of a game, left the ball first ball of a second innings. The cut like straight into middle and leg stump. You tick those off and you don't fear them anymore. And my dad used to say, you face the first ball, it's the hardest ball that bowler's going to bowl because that if new ball, they don't necessarily control that first ball. Now, you get to this level, you hope they do somewhat, but as a lefty, you're hoping just either something too wide that doesn't swing back or it's off your hip. There's your one, and away you go. So I much prefer to open than bat down the lower order.
Now, both of you can answer this question about white ball versus red ball. Do you reckon you were a better white ball cricketer or a red ball cricketer?
I was a better one-day cricketer. So if
Yep.
I had to rank, I'd go one-day cricketer, Shield cricketer, 2020 cricketer. Shorty?
Yeah, I think white ball. I think I'm more suited to white ball. I guess maybe it just suits my game style, more aggressive, especially sort of opening the batting, as Bobby was saying. Like, got that freedom and probably a bit more pressure on the bowlers, I reckon, than the batters. So, yeah, probably a few more mind tricks in the red ball kind of things.
So how
Batting time and
So how differently do you bat, or do you just let natural ability take
yeah,
over?
I think that's sort of what I'm fighting with at the moment.
Yeah,
is,
that's what I wanted to ask you because it's going well at the moment for you.
It is. But yeah, obviously you're thinking a little bit more conservative in the red ball and batting more time. But I go sort of back what Fong was saying was open the batting. You know that's your set role. It's going to be the same every time. The ball's new, field's up. Whereas if you're batting in the middle, you don't know what scenario you're going to come in. You might be 3 down for nothing, or you might be 3 down for 250. So being able to adapt is something I'm still probably learning and coming in at different times. But yeah, definitely enjoy top of the order there in the white ball.
Yeah. What about for you? So where you ranked at 50 over first, did that help you become a better Shield player as you sort of felt more comfortable at that level, or how did it evolve for you as a
I felt like as an opener, I probably played a few more shots than other openers at that time. And by that, I mean, I probably early doors didn't know where my off stump was. So I tended to want bat on ball a lot more. I was a compulsive hooker, so I tend to take that on a little bit more. I was fighting demons about, I was saying, don't play it, and just kept playing it until I reframed it and said, this is my single. This is everyone else's off the hip. This is my single. I was usually pretty good at, if it was too high, you could get out of the way. If it was too short, you'd find a way to get through. But finding the difference, my only downfall, I think, in one-day cricket, apart from I was never great at spin, but was converting. I had so many starts and never converted too many. I think I only got 1 or 2 hundreds in one-day cricket. And we were in positions where at North Sydney Oval, 30 overs, I was on 80 runs, and instead of the batsmanship of going, I don't think it's selfish. It means, all right, I'm just going through the gears. I'm just going to gear down here and make sure I get to that 100, knowing that I could just explode and it doesn't matter after that. So I just think my game was more suited to one-day game than it was a 4-day game.
So what then happened? What then, you talk about gears, you went to this other gear where all of a sudden you just started making mountains of runs. Did anything change in the way you played, or was it more a mindset thing? Because all of a sudden you're on the Australian radar. You never thought you'd play Victorian. All of a sudden there's talk about, well, you just got to play this guy because he just keeps making all these runs.
Belief was the biggest one. I was quite an insecure cricketer. Always like, okay, you make runs and you're like, oh, what did I do wrong? Like, no, like, if I could give myself a piece of advice is be proud or walk off with your chest out. You might have nicked a few through to third man, but hey, like that's where else are you supposed to get your runs? Other people get them there. Shorty gets them there. I get them down there. That's the way it is, and it would alleviate a lot of any anxiety that went with that. But knowing your game is so important, and it takes time. So you talk about that period of my career. I think I was about 28, 29 through that period. And they talk about a peak between 25 and 30, and maybe that's where I was peaking. Yeah.
So you talk about insecurities. In that Victorian setup, who were the people that you relied on to help you with those insecurities, to give you the confidence?
It probably wasn't within the squad. You almost just put on a facade around the squad, to make sure that, everything's all right. And then I'd go back to Graham Rummins at club cricket to sort of say, mate, I'm struggling a little bit. And it was almost similar to what I guess maybe Terry Jenner did with Shane Warne. It sounded like a lot of the stuff, there was elements of technical with those two, but it was more about, no, you're a good spinner, and Rummo would go, mate, you're a good batter, but you need to believe it. And sometimes it's just conversations like that. We go, okay, well, yeah, all right. And then you walk away and you believe it, and then it helps you all of a sudden. So that was my go-to outside of that. Within the team, like, you know, opening batting with Julie was good because it'd keep you honest. It'd keep you, you know, come mate, pull your head in. You know, we've got a bigger picture here. So again, well, St Kilda guys, obviously, you know, that helped that. Cam White was good, and he's you know, Cam White's impact on a lot of batters within the squad through his time has been immense. You know. Sometimes I think early doors he was quite blunt and direct in terms of his advice and mentorship, but you know, his last 5-6 years, you know, he's been amazing. So those three were pretty instrumental.
What makes it? I'll ask you this first, man, about Cam White, because so many people talk about the influence that he's had on you, on not just you, but on players. What is it about him?
I think Bobby nailed it on the head. He's just keeps it so simple. He's got a wealth of knowledge. You know, he's captained at such a young age, and you know, been all around the world, and even started coaching. You know, the last 3 or 4 years, he's sort of getting better at that and understanding the younger boys a bit better now. I think now he's out of the squad.
What about the time difference? Like when he first come onto the scene, and it's like, you've got to earn your stripes, champ. And you speak when you're spoken to. Where now it's like we're embracing everyone. You know, You've been in for 1 minute, you can talk as much as, you know, Pete Hanscom at the moment.
Yeah. It goes back to sort of when I first started in the squad. I might have spoken about this the other week. Like, everyone in the change room was either playing for Australia or had played for Australia. Fong was one of those. And yeah, I think now, and you know, Whitey was such a big part of that, and had, you know, he's captain at the time, and yeah, now he's sort of taken that step back and he's not involved with the Vics anymore. But you know, young guys are going up to him and trying to get the knowledge off him, and just sort of shows how good he is. And
I think early doors he wasn't as necessarily, especially when he's captain, he wasn't as approachable as he was. So maybe his first few years, but after that, I guess he probably had like an intimidating factor about him as well, particularly to the young guys. And he was straight to the point. And I guess maybe if you're a young guy, you're going, I might ask him or him. And once they break the barrier down to actually speak with Whitey, like floodgates, what he's got to offer, like you said, inside the knowledge and the experience that he has, and simplifies everything. But he doesn't necessarily sugarcoat anything either, which I think is really good.
Yeah. So it's hard to believe it was 10 years ago, the 2012-13 season. It's quite terrifying, actually. You go and make 85 against South Africa, playing for Australia A team, and all of a sudden you're kind of franking all this form from the Sheffield Shield. Did you think you were going to get a call?
Nah, my Shield form, because I think we played 2 or 3 Shield games before that game, and Shield form was horrendous. I think I got to 30 in about 3 games, and got the Aussie A game. I thought, perfect. Look, that's a bit of acknowledgement from the last 2 years. Went up there, had Moe Reeks, Andrew McDonald and Phil Hughes, and I thought, like, those guys, they're the guys that are on the radar right now. And so I just took it for what it was and gone, look, if this is as high as I get, that's pretty cool. And I know sometimes the Aussie A games tend to be a bit of a practice match and people sort of play for themselves, but I just went there, had a bit of fun. I knew I'd met like guys like Dale Steyn, Morné Morkel, Graham Smith, all them before, but it helped a little bit seeing them around, like whatever nerves were there. And then Dale Steyn was bowling at about 60% in that first innings on a pretty slow SCG wicket, so it helped. The thing I was proud of most was how I handled Imran Tahir. That was my biggest nerve. I got there. It helps when you're sort of like 40 or 50 or by the time he comes on, but got to pick him a little bit and played him really well. And I walked away from that innings going, yep, like I felt pretty good. And then the second innings was interesting. So Liam Davis was opening with me. He got out early in the second innings, and it's when just got to play time. Like I think we had to play an hour after tea on the last day and the third day, and it's like we have to. There's people in the crowd. They've paid their money. Like you've just got to keep playing. And sure enough, like Dale Steyn again is bowling probably about 75% at this stage. But then Phil Hughes gets down the other end, and holy Jesus, like he ramps it up well and truly. Like a couple of balls sing past his grill, and you go down there and he goes, "Bros, he's bowling fast." I said, "No shit." I said, "You can stay down that end." But it was a clear that I think even their process, they thought that Phil was going to play. and just try to, ruffle some feathers and start the intimidating process from there. But I felt like it was like a couple of boys knew that I'd been selected before I did, because we had the shower, we're having a beer, and there was this, like looking back, there was people smiling. I was like, what are they smiling at, Inverarity comes over and says, can I speak to you on the balcony? Yeah, the balcony, the SCG balcony. And straight away it's like, you can't get dropped from an Aussie A game, can you? So you walk over there and he's like, oh, look, Shane Watson's injuries on standby. You can go up on standby up to Queensland. We just want to give you enough notice. And went up to Queensland, I think like 6 days out. Then I think a day and a half later, they'd ruled Watto out and said, we'll give you, as much notice and preparation time as possible. And yeah, got the family up, which was pretty cool, and it was great. Alan Border, the hat, like he was. I'm not sure how many people always talk about having posters on a wall. I'm not sure how many people actually have posters on their wall anymore, but he was on my wall. Like it was, that the slog sweep shot with his Duncan Fernley, and then him, he's handing, minus his moustache, but handing my baggy green to me, saying some nice words. You sort of sit there and pinch yourself, and you go, "Holy shit! Like this is real." And yeah, so that experience was good, except for the next 9 or 10 days of Test cricket, didn't really pan out.
Well, I think you've just given a great insight into being selected for Australia. You talked about being like a dream. When does it become a reality? Is it when you're walking out for the first time to bat? Is it when does you sort of think?
No, just on the field. On the field, you do the national anthem, and that still feels like not quite real. And it's not until they get into it and the opening bowlers are coming in. I think Hilfenhaus, Paddo, Sids were getting into their work, and then when you're in the field, and it might have been first game Victoria or whatever, but you want the first catch to stick as well, the first chance, and it didn't happen for ages. But yeah, it was fine.
Now you didn't bat until late in the third day because of rain and whatever else, and people still talk of it as the best 9 in the history of Test
I think
cricket.
only one person talked of it as being the best 9 in Test cricket was Mickey Arthur, the coach. But I don't know how. I nicked one for 4. I bunted a couple of pull shots for 2, and then got caught on the boundary. I don't know how it was so good, but there's another one. What is it? Seagull Saver and best Test 9. That can be my motto.
What was it like? You talked about staying bowling at 60% in the Australia A game, but he was bowling pretty quick that day.
So my first ball, I was going through my head. I went against everything that I'd got to that point. I said, don't pull him. If he bowls short, don't pull him. And sure enough, he bowled short and I pulled him. Like, it's like, you dickhead. But it was such, it's so bittersweet to get to that position, but to then fail like I did, it was so deflating. And, you make 9 and it is what it is. We always want to make runs on our debut, but then the next test was obviously horrendous. And it's probably more that I felt like I let a lot of people down. I had so much support, and I'm sure everyone does when they make their test debut or play for Australia. But I just felt like, it was hard to go back to them, and I wanted to say sorry to everyone that supported me because I'd let them down. And I know, you're shaking your head now, and rightly so, but that's how I felt and how I still feel, to this day. There's elements of like, geez, I wish I could have done a whole lot better for so many people. It's not me. Like I cop it on the chin. After the Adelaide Test match, we're obviously flat that we couldn't get the win. It was a long draw.
You bowled about 25 overs.
Well, my Test career, I think I bowled 25 overs for 29 runs or something. Yeah. So if I got 1 wicket, I might have had an average. But I remember, again, Mickey Arthur and Michael Clark saying, can we just have a word? And I walked in and I apologised and said, thanks for the opportunity. I made it easy for him because I knew what was happening. But I just said, appreciate the opportunity and, sorry I let you down.
Which you didn't. That's just cricket.
It is. No, it is. It's cricket, but it shows how important it is to take your opportunity in that small time when you do get a chance at the top, and how cutthroat it is at the top. The final words for them was like, your next cab off the rank, it's okay, which clearly I wasn't, but that is what it is. But it shows how quickly things can pass you by like that. So.
Do you look back on it now and wish you had another opportunity?
Of course.
Does it stew on you, or is it just it is?
It only stews on me probably when I talk about it. And I guess there are a lot of people who go, "Hey, you've got a baggy green. Like it's better than this person and that person." It's like, yeah, but it's like having an amazing bat and not being able to use it. You know, I wore it for 2 tests. I've worn it out the backyard having a couple of beers at times just to get some wear into it. You know, but it's that's why it's bittersweet.
I've got 2 more questions for you because I know we're going to wrap it up. How proud are you of the 5 Shield titles and being part of that three-peat?
Huge. As I said earlier, being I've always been a team first player. My roles in each final were different. There were times where I did nothing, times where I contributed heavily, times where I didn't have to contribute really much at all. But being a part of that, I guess you get to the stage of the season where everyone's cooked, everyone's tired, and then there is an element of war of attrition. And particularly with a few of those, I think 3 of those, if not 4, were draws as well, knowing we're the top side, and we just got to make sure that our plan was to make sure we don't lose, you know, and that can be emotionally draining at the same time as well. So, you know, to do it in 4, where we did 1 at the Junction, 1 at the G, 1 at Alice Springs, 1 at Bluntstone, and 1 at Glenelg. You know, so it's, the narratives behind that. We'll probably need another 3 or 4 podcasts to go through that, but it's great, and I'm so proud to be part of a team, both St Kilda and for Victoria, that had success and be part of that. So that's one thing that I'm super proud of.
And we always ask the question: what does Victorian cricket mean to you?
I've heard this in the previous podcast too, and I sort of separated into 2. What does cricket mean for me? Cricket's changed my life and given me a direction and guidance in life. It's given me confidence, assurance, and I guess a chance to really grow into an adult through my time, you know, from 23 to 32 or 33, however old I was, or 34. Victorian cricket is something that I said I never thought that I would play for St Kilda first, let alone Victoria. I remember Matthew Elliott coming to my primary school one year, and I've gone, I want to be him. And so to be able to, in a sense, be him was probably something that what Victoria cricket means to me. It's awesome to represent your state, you know, to go out on the field and battle with some mates and win or lose. I think the one thing that was pretty constant, it doesn't have to be about drinking, but the one thing that was pretty constant with a lot of us was come off the ground, you had a crack, have a beer. You know, you need to be consistent. You know, if you're happy to have a beer and people get around you when you do well, you need to be that person to get around someone else when they've done well as well.
Just not KFC or Domino's pizzas.
We had KFC parties. It was all right. If you do a lot of fitness, Dave Bailey used to be our strength and conditioning coach. You can nearly eat whatever you want if you train hard enough. So I've just got that balance just a little off at the moment.
Matt, thank you for coming in and being part of it. As you said, one of your heroes growing up.
Yeah, it's just awesome just to sit down and listen to
Yeah,
them for
definitely.
minutes.
And Bobby, I know we've been meaning to do this for quite some time, so it's been great to have you on the podcast. And we'll catch you again soon.
Thanks for having me. And I love this podcast too. I hope there's a lot of people listening to it because the stories that are coming out of it from both a male or female perspective and the past of Victoria, it's something that I think we've lacked a little bit in the past players area. So to hear the guys like Merv and Huss and Herb and stuff like that so far has been pretty cool. So well done.
It's great to have you, Victorian and Australian player. We'll speak to you again soon.
Cheers.
That is it for us for this week. Matt, good luck in Queensland.
Thanks, Whitey. Cheers.
Hopefully we can get some points and set up, that almost getting to the middle phase of the season now.
Yeah.
So we've got to start
Well, the
to
result
make
will be
our
very
move. Yeah, absolutely. We'll be back next week. We'll catch you then.